Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics, and today I'm going to talk to you about composition and how you might possibly lay out your comic book pages to display better or read better. So I've got a page that I'm drawing here in the Blackstone Eternal comic book, which, by the way, you can find on indieplanet.com in both digital and print on demand. First, I lay out my frames here. I'm working in Sketchbook Pro 7, just so you know, and I start to rough out my thumbnails. And the reason they're called thumbnails is you want to keep them extremely loose and just sketch oriented, nothing overly detailed. You're not worried about anything except, I would say, placement. Maybe your direction of your camera angles, or definitely your direction of your camera angles, but I was going to say maybe some of your shading and stuff like that, shapes of shadows. Which shapes of shadows is going to be really important as you progress and you get better at drawing this stuff. It kind of helps encapsulate the action or what you're trying to convey in the storyline. So if you notice there, I circle and I put focus. That's kind of my shape of shadow that I haven't outlined the shapes of the shadows yet, but that's what I start with. I circle the area, I say focal point. If it's a punch, then obviously the focal point is the impact of the punch. If it's a close up and they're saying something dramatic, maybe the focal point is the eye or the iris or whatever. So I try to start that even in the thumbnail stage. I try to start pinpointing that. The other thing is to make the information read from left to right and downward to the next left, so like a Z pattern, at least in American comics. So I try to also draw the action to make it work that way. And if something's pointing in the design, maybe I point it to the next panel, or the shadowing, maybe I make the shadows point to the next panel, and that all helps the read. The idea is to keep the viewer entranced and in the story. Like you've probably heard the term breaking the fourth wall, where the character makes a comedic gesture or looks at the camera and says something to the reader, and it takes them out of the element of being in the story. So that's good for comedy, and I guess it could be used in other scenarios, but generally it's a comedic thing. But really, you don't want to do that. That's actually against what you're trying to convey here. A lot of times, if you pull the reader out of the story, even if your art's really good or the story's great, but then it has this huge uh, bleep that pulls them right out, then it kind of defeats the purpose, and the reader can be lost and move on. And attention spans are really short. So the idea is to keep the reader inside the story. So now I've converted it to a blue line. In Sketchbook Pro, you just drop another layer and put it to screen mode and color it blue, and then each layer beneath that will be a blue line. So I'm now refining the lines a little bit more and drawing over top. I'm still not committed to anything I'm putting in here, other than I've got a better feel for what my scene's starting to look like now. I'm still up in the air as far as the background details. The first panel that you see me working on here, that's the establishing shot. The thing to keep in mind there is anytime you start a new segment to the story or the characters are in a new spot, you want a bigger, wider shot. It's referred to it as an establishing shot, and there should be elements of the background where they're positioned in the story. Then from there, you can omit parts of that and you can do a little bit less details because you've already explained to them, hey, these guys are in a futuristic city scenario. There's people walking around in the background, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we can zoom in, do the fight pose and punches and things like that, and kicks or whatever. And then the reader can remember that establishing shot and remember where they are in the story. So that's the reasoning for that. So don't forget to do the establishing shots like I often did and still do. So here I'm just trying to refine the line work a little bit more. Still not entirely sure about all the details, but that is the beauty of digital. I can grab areas of it and rework them really fast. I can distort them. I'm getting better at doing that all the time, and the tools are getting better for that all the time. So you can really grab an area of a drawing and distort it and not necessarily even have to redraw sometimes, which is really nice. Now, if you see that circle shape around Blackstone, because I wanted him to be the focal point, of this particular scene. I want your eye to kind of start there. I circle it, and then you'll see I'll try to build some of the shadows with that design so that it pushes you in that direction. The background, I'm still kind of working it out. You see, I use the perspective tool that comes with Sketchbook Pro 7, and I'm able to draw perspectively or in perspective really quick and easy, which is awesome. It's got one of the best perspective drawing tools I've seen thus far. And I'm kind of a software junkie. I bounce back and forth from Sketchbook to Manga Studio to Photoshop, and yeah, I really get into software, probably a little too much, but always interested in the new tools that are out there and what they allow you to do. By no means do I mean to take away from traditional methods, which are the foundation of all this and which are fantastic. I don't know. I'm kind of a techie guy, so I really like the nerdy computer stuff. But so you see here, I'm trying to build in more of those shadows. I end up defining the light sources being behind the villain, which I'll end up shading the entire front of the villain because of that. Heavy shadows on the back of Blackstone there and the alien, and against that wall. So now I'm able to encapsulate that scene, and again try to push a little bit more of the direction, especially with the little motion and detail lines. I can push it more towards where I wanted the view to start with Blackstone. So now in the next scene, I'm still trying to figure out, if I was going to do a background here. I ultimately decide not to. I'm just going to do more with the shading and everything. Um, but then again, I may change that. I'm never stuck with one thing, especially with digital, how you have the ease to change things. If a better idea presents itself as I'm drawing, and the time intensity of it uh, is worth the investment, if it's not too time intensive, then I'm going to redraw it and I'm going to throw it in there. And if it makes the scene that much better, then definitely. But for this particular type of scene where he's throwing a punch and hitting or I'm sorry, he's swinging past Blackstone in this scene. Um, I can pretty much convey all that, I think, a lot better with just some line work and some shading. And again, doing that shape that I see in there, makes it easier to kind of convey that, I guess, instead of a bunch of background details that might pull you away from where I'm trying to point the view, which in this one is right in the middle of that scene where the swinging punch and the swing and the miss, so that's the focal of this one, obviously. And I'm sorry that this isn't a really advanced page. It's pretty basic, but I wanted that because there's actually so much to talk about when it comes in the way of composition and laying out a comic book page. I mean, even this here took a few hours to do. By the time you see I go to the next stage and clean it up a little bit more, um, and actually I separate the last part into another video, which will be after this one. So be sure to check that out. But that's where I do more of the finished pencils. And then here you'll see that I end up having trouble drawing, of all things, my character's face, which is actually a pretty easy face to draw, but certain angles can be tricky, and sometimes it's just like, you'll see I fight with it here for a minute and I eventually get it, but um, yeah, I was kind of a little bit upset with myself because it's like, man, that's probably the one thing I should have down to a science at this point is drawing his face, but certain angles just still bother me, or whatever, it happens. So should have had my V8, I guess. But this page ultimately it'll be in the comic book. It's going to be in book two. Book one's already done, and I'm working through book two. But this page, although not being very advanced, is just going to show a portion of the story where they interact and begin to fight, and then that carries through a few more pages where they kind of rumble through uh, this futuristic version of Earth where they're at, and some soldiers try to intervene. Some you know Earth type soldiers, E3 police or whatever, and they pretty much don't even pay any attention to them. They're just fighting, and those guys are secondary in the background. But so you'll see that in the next few pages if you decide to get the book. Please and thank you. Um, So yeah, still working out the line art, and see, I keep grabbing things and adjusting them and distorting them or whatever, getting them right where I feel they need to be. Um, great tool. That's my single favorite thing about digital is the ability to do that and keep the artwork moving forward and not getting frustrated and just you know sending it to the recycling bin and starting over. You just kind of just keep manipulating it till you get it right. So yeah, and there's those motion lines I was talking about. By the time I finish that scene, it'll have a lot of that, but I think it'll improve the action of the scene, and again, it will encapsulate and point to the fist is what I'm seeing as I'm drawing that here. I'm trying to shade around and kind of detail everything around his fist, which I think should have been a bit larger. I think I should have twisted the character more, tucked the other arm back, and made the fist larger. But sometimes you just go roll with something for time's sake, and then move forward to get to the next panel, to get something done. And then this is my favorite shot of the scene. Obviously Blackstone misses, and then he retaliates and gives him a nice kiss on the cheek there. So, but I like the way this one, drew out or whatever. Um, I think I did halfway decent with the positioning and everything. I broke the fist out of the border, which you're not supposed to do. A lot of professional big companies don't want you to do it. This is me drawing my own independent comic book, so you know what? I'm gonna have fun with it. Generally, I'm busting characters all out of the borders all the way around. I'm trying to tone that down a bit because then, when you do decide to do it, it loses some of the impact and the intensity. So I'm trying to mind myself when it comes to that. And plus, you should be able to tell a really good story with everything being inside the constraints of the panels or frames. But I thought for this shot, it would kind of add to it, and it was just looking a touch boring. So I think that would give it a little bit more flair. And then tried to make Krim's face up closer to the viewer, so it would really push the dramatization of him getting smacked in the next week there. So, and you'll see here I struggle with this face a little bit too. Upshots are always a killer for me, and I always forget to always adjust the face to one side or the other, up or down or whatever. Yeah, I always want to draw it dead center of the shape. So you see I distorted it, and I'll probably even do it a little bit more in the finished pencil stage. Alright, well, this video is coming to a close, so I thank you for watching. Be sure to check out the next video where I take this a little bit further and do some finished pencils and define the shadows a bit more, stuff like that. And be sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends, and check out the Blackstone Eternal comic available on Indie Planet. It's available now for digital download and print on demand. So thanks very much for watching. Keep drawing, keep having fun. Bye bye.